The Eclipse was the sort of ship that gave space hulks a bad name. A floating heap of rust and regret, it drifted through the void like a drunk stumbling home after one too many. Captain Vex Braith, a woman who had seen more than her fair share of bad decisions, squinted at the readout panel with the sort of disdain usually reserved for tax audits and in-laws. "Well, that's new," she muttered, tapping the flickering display that had decided to start showing her the weather on a planet they were nowhere near. It was raining cats and existential dread. "What's new?" chimed in Rax, the ship's engineer, a man who looked like he was perpetually auditioning for a role as the before picture in a hygiene product advert. "The fact that this heap of junk still thinks it's a ship, for one," Vex replied, smacking the panel hard enough to make it cough up some sparks. "And second, that anomaly ahead." Rax squinted at the screen, which now seemed intent on displaying a pixelated rendition of what might have been a black hole if it had been drawn by a particularly uninspired toddler. "Lovely. Last time we ran into an anomaly, we ended up with the entire left wing replaced by some kind of interdimensional fungus." Vex shrugged. "Could have been worse. Could have been interdimensional paperwork." Their exchange of bleak witticisms was interrupted by the arrival of Nix, the ship's medic, who somehow managed to maintain an air of professional detachment, despite the fact she was wearing a stained lab coat and mismatched socks. "If you two are done flirting, there's a ship-wide alert. Something about a dimensional anomaly, we noticed," Vex said dryly. "Thought it was just Rax's cooking again." Rax rolled his eyes, a maneuver he had perfected over years of dealing with Vex's unique brand of leadership. "We should probably check it out." "Check what out?" A new voice joined the fray, Duke, their pilot, whose laid-back demeanor suggested he was either incredibly chilled or heavily sedated, or both. "The big swirly thing that's threatening to dissolve reality as we know it," Vex replied, as if explaining the concept of gravity to a toddler. Duke shrugged, which was his response to most things. "Fine by me, just as long as it doesn't mess with my nap schedule." Vex shook her head, striding toward the bridge. "All right, team. Let's see what fresh hell we're dealing with today." The bridge of the Eclipse was no less disappointing than the rest of the ship. Consoles were held together with duct tape and prayer, and the view through the main window was more akin to staring at a particularly grimy fish tank than at the stars. Hovering in the void ahead of them was the anomaly, a swirling mass of colors that looked like someone had put a rainbow through a blender and set it to puree. It pulsed with a sort of malevolent beauty, like a seductress with a switchblade. "Well," Nix said, crossing her arms, "that looks like trouble." "Define trouble," Rax said, scratching his head. "The kind where we either solve this or get turned inside out by the laws of physics throwing a tantrum," Vex replied, deadpan. "Can't be worse than the time we had to outrun that sentient asteroid," Duke pointed out, settling into the pilot's chair as if it were a recliner and he was about to catch up on his soaps. Vex rubbed her temples. "Don't remind me. I'm still picking bits of asteroid out of my hair." Rax fiddled with the controls, trying to coax some coherence from the ship's array of sensors, which were notoriously unreliable at the best of times. "I'm getting readings off the scale. It's like the universe decided to throw a rave and didn't invite us." Vex leaned over his shoulder, squinting at the data. "Looks like we've got company too." Sure enough, blips appeared on the radar, indicating the arrival of other ships. The kind of ships that didn't just stumble into anomalies by accident like the Eclipse had a habit of doing. "Looks like our neighbors have decided to crash the party," Nix noted, not particularly thrilled by the prospect. "Probably here to make sure we don't break the universe," Vex said, dry as a desert. "Not that we do that on purpose." Duke snorted. "Speak for yourself." Rax rubbed his chin, a motion that suggested he was about to say something profound but usually meant he was thinking about lunch. "So what's the plan, Captain?" Vex took a deep breath, the sort of deep breath that usually precedes either a heroic decision or a catastrophic one. "We get closer, see what we can learn, and try not to die in the process." "Solid plan," Nix said, sarcasm dripping from every syllable. As the eclipse edged toward the anomaly, the swirling colors grew more vivid, their chaotic dance a mocking challenge to the laws of physics. It felt like they were approaching the universe's most pretentious art installation. "I've always wanted to see how far we can push our luck," Duke said, adjusting the controls with a nonchalance that suggested he had long ago resigned himself to whatever fate awaited them. "Let's just hope our luck holds," Rax muttered, tapping the console as if that might make the sensors behave. "Hope in one hand, crap in the other, see which fills up first," Vex replied, her voice laced with dark humor. The anomaly loomed larger, its swirling forms growing more chaotic. It was like staring into the eye of a psychedelic storm, one that promised either enlightenment or annihilation, or both. Rax's hands danced over the controls, pulling up every scrap of information the Eclipse's tired systems could offer. "I'm detecting energy signatures from other dimensions. Not just one or two, either. We're talking multiversal buffet." Vex raised an eyebrow. "A buffet? Hope it's all you can eat because I'm starving." "Let's just hope we're not the main course," Nyx chimed in, her tone as dry as a sun-baked planet. As if on cue, the comms crackled to life, a voice emerging from the static. It was the kind of voice that suggested its owner had been gargling with gravel and bad intentions. "Unidentified vessel, this is the frigate Vengeance of the Zyger Alliance. State your purpose." Vex, never one to back down from a challenge, grabbed the comms. "This is Captain Vex Braith of the Eclipse. We're just passing through and trying not to die." "How about you?" There was a pause, the kind that suggested the Zyger captain was either very amused or very angry. Hard to tell, really, over interstellar long distance. "Your presence here is unauthorized," the gravelly voice replied, making unauthorized sound like a personal insult. "Yeah, well, so is your haircut," Vex shot back, earning a smirk from her crew. The comms went silent and Vex turned to her team. "All right, we've pissed off the neighbors. Now let's see if we can figure out what this anomaly is before they decide to blow us up." Rax, who had been quietly running diagnostics, piped up. "I'm picking up something else. There's a structure inside the anomaly, looks like a station of some kind." "A station?" Duke asked, a hint of interest breaking through his usual apathy. Nyx nodded. "Great. Maybe they have a gift shop," Vex sighed. "Okay, change of plans, we're going in." "Into the anomaly?" Rax asked, his voice tinged with the sort of incredulity usually reserved for people announcing they were about to bathe in lava. "Into the anomaly," Vex confirmed. "Get us close enough to dock with that station. We need answers." With a chorus of resigned groans, the crew set about their tasks. The Eclipse shuddered as it moved closer to the swirling mass, the ship's systems protesting with every inch. As they crossed the threshold of the anomaly, the universe seemed to tilt, reality itself bending in ways that would have sent lesser crews screaming for the escape pods. But the crew of the Eclipse had long ago learned that the universe was less a kindly friend and more an unpredictable drunk uncle at the family reunion. "Well," Rax said, as the colors outside the viewport shifted to hues that didn't technically exist in this dimension. "Either we're about to make history or become it." Vex gripped the armrests of her chair, her knuckles white. "Either way, it's going to be one hell of a ride." The Eclipse lurched forward, the ship's creaking protests as comforting as a lullaby or a death rattle. Duke gripped the controls with the relaxed precision of a drunk guiding a shopping cart. Vex, ever the optimist, was already imagining the many ways this could go wrong. "Do you think we'll survive this?" Nyx asked, her voice as clinical as the scalpel she kept in her boot. Vex gave a half-hearted shrug. "If we don't, I'm sure someone will write an obituary. Here lies a crew of idiots who thought they could outsmart a cosmic blender." Rax, busy wrestling with a tangle of wires that might have once been part of the communication system, chimed in without looking up. "Remind me why we're flying into the cosmic equivalent of a bad acid trip." "Because we're curious," Vex replied, staring into the swirling madness outside. "And because I'd rather die doing something stupid than live with the regret of not doing anything at all." "Stupidity is a hell of a motivator," Duke noted, as he adjusted their trajectory. As they drew closer, it became apparent just how wrong everything was. Reality folded in on itself like a cheap card table, and the station Rax had detected loomed into view, impossibly suspended in the swirling chaos. It looked like someone had taken an ordinary space station and fed it through a Salvador Dali painting. "Is that supposed to be a station?" Nix asked, skepticism practically dripping from her tone. "Either that or the universe's ugliest piñata," Vex replied. They docked without incident, which was surprising in its own right. Vex half expected the universe to have its revenge pretty soon. The crew disembarked, not entirely sure what they'd find inside but fairly certain it wouldn't be a welcome mat and cookies. Inside, the station was a chaotic mess of steel and spiraling patterns that seemed to shift when you weren't looking. The kind of place that would make interior decorators weep and physicists salivate. A combination that pretty much summed up human innovation. "Looks like someone forgot to read the manual," Rax commented, kicking an errant piece of circuitry. Vex led them through the twisted corridors, her eyes sweeping over the place for anything that screamed important or don't touch. They ended up in a control room that was all flickering screens and buzzing consoles. Kind of like the Eclipse, just with more existential dread. "All right, let's see what we've got here," Vex said, settling into a chair that had seen better days. With the flair of a magician pulling a rabbit out of a hat, Rax worked at the console, bringing up displays filled with data that might as well have been written in another language. Which, considering the anomaly, wasn't out of the question. Nix leaned over, her eyes scanning the information. "Looks like some kind of multiversal gate. Humans messing around with interdimensional travel again. Fantastic. Just what the universe needed, more of us," Vex muttered, rubbing her temples. Rax tapped a few keys, bringing up a diagram that looked like the universe's worst flowchart. "Yep, it reeks of human engineering. Overcomplicated and undertested. And now it's causing a multiverse meltdown," Duke said, looking almost impressed. "I guess we really are special." "We're special, all right," Vex agreed. "Special enough that every alien species out there is going to want our heads on a stick," Nix nodded. "We should probably do something about that." "Like what?" Duke asked. "Apologize. Send a fruit basket." "Let's try turning it off first," Vex suggested. Before the rest of the universe decides to drop by for a chat, Rax set to work, his hands moving over the controls with all the precision of a man defusing a bomb. Which, given their current situation, wasn't far from the truth. "Any idea how to shut it down?" Nix asked, peering over his shoulder. "Not a clue," Rax admitted. "But I'm an engineer, not a miracle worker." "Give me a minute." Duke watched from the corner of the room, arms crossed. "You know, I always thought if humanity ended up causing the apocalypse, it'd be through nuclear war or climate change. Not this." "Well, humans are nothing if not innovative," Vex replied. "And let's face it, we've always been a bit too curious for our own good. Curiosity killed the cat," Nix pointed out. "Yeah, but satisfaction brought it back," Rax countered, grinning as he found something that looked promising. "There we go. I think I found the off switch. Think?" Vex asked, arching an eyebrow. "Hey, it's either that or the button for self-destruct. We'll find out soon enough." Before anyone could argue, Rax hit the button. The station shuddered, a low hum filling the air, and for a moment they held their breath, waiting for either oblivion or salvation. The screens went dark, the hum subsiding into silence. Outside, the swirling chaos lessened, the colors fading to a more manageable level of weirdness. It was like they'd managed to turn down the volume on a cosmic tantrum. "Well, that's an improvement," Nix said, cautiously optimistic. "Let's hope it lasts," Vex replied, standing up. "We need to get off this station and back to the Eclipse before anyone decides to pay us a visit." "Too late," Duke said, glancing out a viewport. "Looks like we've got company." Vex followed his gaze, her eyes narrowing as she spotted the ships converging on their location. Sleek, alien designs that made the Eclipse look even more like a floating scrapyard. "Great. Just what we needed," she muttered. "All right, back to the ship. Let's see if we can outrun an armada. They made their way back to the Eclipse with all the speed of a crew who'd just poked the universe's eye and lived to tell the tale, though whether they'd live much longer was still up in the air. Once on board, Vex didn't waste any time. "Get us out of here, Duke. Preferably before they turn us into space dust." With pleasure, he replied, guiding the ship away from the station with a practiced hand. The Eclipse groaned in protest, as if annoyed with them for yet another round of interdimensional shenanigans. But it complied, engines flaring to life and propelling them into the black. "Think we'll make it?" Rax asked, not sounding entirely convinced. "Depends on how pissed they are," Vex replied, keeping one eye on the radar. "And how fast this bucket can go." Duke pushed the engines to their limits, the ship vibrating with the effort. The alien ships trailed behind, a reminder that the universe wasn't going to let them off easy. "You know," Nick said, as they hurtled through space, "I always figured if we were going to piss off the entire universe, we'd at least do it for a good reason." "We did it for science," Vex said, as if that made all the difference. "Science?" Rax snorted. "More like we did it for the hell of it." "Well, now we're doing it to stay alive," Duke said. "So let's hope our luck holds." The Eclipse raced onward, the anomaly shrinking behind them along with the threat of immediate annihilation. But the alien ships weren't giving up that easily. "Any ideas?" Rax asked, glancing back at Vex. "Because I'm fresh out." Vex considered their options, which were depressingly few. "We need to lose them. Find somewhere to hide." Nix repeated. "We're in open space." "Not exactly a lot of hiding spots," there, Duke said, pointing to the navigation screen. "Asteroid field up ahead. We can lose them in there." "Risky," Rax noted, "but better than getting vaporized." Vex nodded. "Do it. And try not to hit anything." The Eclipse veered toward the asteroid field, the alien ships hot on their tail. It was a gamble, one that could end in a heroic escape or a fiery demise. But they'd long since learned that in their line of work, gambling was a necessary evil. As they entered the field, Duke maneuvered the ship with the skill of a pilot who'd spent far too much time playing chicken with death. Asteroids loomed on all sides, but the Eclipse danced between them with surprising agility. "Hold on," Duke warned, steering them through a particularly tight gap. "Just another day at the office," Vex said as the ship shuddered under the strain. The alien ships followed, their silhouettes barely visible among the rocks. But in the chaos, one miscalculated, smashing into an asteroid and erupting in a blaze of light. "One down," Rax noted with a certain grim satisfaction. "And 100 more to go," Nix added. They continued deeper into the field, the aliens struggling to keep up. It was a race against time and probability, but the Eclipse had always been a scrapper, and its crew no strangers to impossible odds. "Almost there," Duke said, guiding them toward the far edge of the field. The alien ships hesitated, their formation breaking as they struggled to follow. It was the opportunity the crew needed, and Duke took full advantage, pushing the engines to the limit. With a final burst of speed, the Eclipse broke free, leaving the asteroid field and their pursuers behind. The alien ships faltered, unwilling or unable to continue the chase. "We did it," Rax said, disbelief mingling with relief. "For now," Vex cautioned, "but we've made a lot of enemies today. We'll need to stay one step ahead." "Not exactly a new experience for us," Nix noted, leaning back in her chair. Vex nodded, the weight of their actions settling over her. "True. But this time it's not just us on the line. If we don't fix this, the whole damn universe might suffer." "Guess we'd better get to work," Duke said, setting a course for their next destination. "No rest for the wicked." "And we're the wickedest," Vex replied, a wry smile playing on her lips. As the Eclipse sailed through the darkness, the crew took a moment to breathe, to savor the small victory. They had a long road ahead, filled with dangers and challenges they couldn't yet imagine. But they were alive, and as long as they had breath in their lungs, they'd keep fighting. "Here's to not dying today," Nix said, raising an imaginary glass. "To not dying," Rax and Duke echoed, the humor in their voices masking the gravity of their situation. "To not dying," Vex agreed, her eyes fixed on the stars ahead. And with that they continued their journey, a crew of misfits and dreamers, hurtling through the void in search of answers, one sarcastic quip at a time. The Eclipse was still shuddering as it skidded out of the asteroid field, bruised but not beaten. Vex Braith looked around at her crew, their expressions a mix of exhaustion and relief. If there was a medal for narrowly avoiding death on a Tuesday afternoon, they'd all be wearing it. Duke had already slumped back in his chair, hands resting on the controls like they were the most comfortable armrests in the universe. "Everyone still alive?" Vex asked, not expecting a chorus of fanfare in response. "Alive enough to complain," Rax groaned, rubbing the back of his neck. "But give me 5 minutes, I'll rustle up some meaningful existential dread." "That's the spirit," Nyx replied dryly, her scalpel a comforting presence in her boot. She leaned over the flickering readout panel, which was still stubbornly displaying the weather forecast for a planet they hadn't seen in weeks. "According to this, it's raining wherever the hell we're supposed to be. So bring an umbrella, perfect. Because I was worried we'd get lost without the weather update," Duke chimed in, his voice as relaxed as ever. Vex smirked, but the levity didn't last. "All right, we've dodged the first round of angry extraterrestrials. Now what?" She glanced at the readout panel, half expecting it to offer some sage advice. "No such luck. Improvised defenses," Rax suggested, as if he was proposing they make a blanket fort. "Out of what?" Nyx asked, raising an eyebrow. "We're not exactly swimming in high-tech weaponry, true, but we do have a ship that's older than any of us. Aren't old things supposed to have hidden talents? Yeah, like spontaneously combusting," Duke added. Vex considered their options, which were about as plentiful as good decisions in a bar at closing time. "Rax, see what the old girl has that we can repurpose. Weapons, defenses, whatever isn't nailed down." "You got it, Captain," he said, pushing himself to his feet with the enthusiasm of a man who'd rather be anywhere else. Nyx watched him go, her expression one of clinical curiosity. "You really think he'll find something useful?" "Probably not," Vex admitted. "But it's either that or we start practicing our surrender speeches." "Always the optimist," Duke remarked, setting the autopilot. "I'll get ready to make us look like a tougher target." "Thanks, Duke." "You're a peach." Rax returned, lugging a dusty crate that looked like it had been through more wars than Vex's liver. "Found this in the storage bay." "It's either a bunch of old tech or the universe's worst loot box. Open it up," Vex instructed, folding her arms. Rax pried the crate open, revealing a jumble of gadgets and gizmos that time forgot. "Looks like we've got some kind of energy dampener. And what I hope isn't a bomb." Nyx picked up a device that resembled a toaster on steroids. "Pretty sure this is a shield generator. Or a paperweight." "Hard to tell. Better than nothing," Vex said. "Rax, see if you can get the shield up and running. Duke, if we have to run again, make sure we don't end up a smear on the nearest asteroid." "Understood," Duke replied, kicking his feet up as if daring the universe to challenge his chill. "Nyx, keep an eye on the sensors. Let us know if our not-so-friendly neighbors decide to drop by unannounced." "Will do," Nyx said, settling into her chair like she planned to interrogate the universe itself through sheer willpower. Vex watched her crew as they set to work. It was a testament to human ingenuity. She supposed that they could make something out of nothing, or at least pretend to. As the Eclipse settled into its new course, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were a hair's breadth from disaster. "Hey, Captain," Rax called from the control panel. "Got the shield running, but it's about as stable as a drunk on a trampoline." "So, typical Eclipse quality," Vex replied. "Just keep it together long enough to make an impression." Nyx glanced up from the sensors, her expression serious for once. "We've got incoming. Multiple ships, and they don't look like they are here for a friendly chat." "Figures," Vex muttered. "Everyone hold tight. Let's see what they want." The alien ships appeared on the view screen, sleek and menacing. They were the kind of ships that made the Eclipse look like a rusty tin can. Vex tried not to let it bother her. After all, appearances weren't everything. Unfortunately, in space skirmishes, they counted for quite a bit. "Think we can talk our way out of this?" Duke asked, glancing at Vex. "Worth a shot," she said, as if she believed it. "Rax, open a channel. The engineer fiddled with the controls, finally nodding as the connection opened. Channels live. Vex leaned forward, projecting an air of confidence she didn't feel. "This is Captain Vex Braith of the Eclipse. We mean no harm and request safe passage." For a moment there was only silence, and Vex wondered if they'd hung up on her. Then a voice crackled through the speakers, dripping with disdain. "Captain Braith, your actions have endangered multiple realities. Explain why we shouldn't disintegrate your ship where it floats." Vex exchanged a glance with Nyx, who gave her an unhelpful shrug. "We didn't plan on breaking reality," Vex replied, keeping her tone light. "We're just trying to fix a mess we stumbled into." The voice repeated, incredulous. "You are responsible for a multiversal breach." "Hey, it could happen to anyone," Duke quipped, earning a glare from Vex. "We're working on repairs," Vex continued, trying to steer the conversation back to survival. "Give us a chance to make it right." There was a pause, and Vex could almost hear the alien's skepticism. "You have one IOR. If the breach remains, you and your ship will be eliminated." The channel went dead, leaving a tense silence in its wake. Vex exhaled slowly, then turned to her crew. "All right, we've got an IOR to fix the unfixable." "Ideas?" Rax scratched his head, a gesture that seemed at odds with their life-and-death situation. "We could try reversing the polarity, see if that stabilizes the breach. That's your plan?" Nyx asked, arching an eyebrow. "Reverse the polarity? Isn't that the goal for every terrible sci-fi plot? Got a better idea?" Rax shot back. "Not really," she admitted. "But if this gets us killed, I'm blaming you." "Fair enough," Rax replied, already moving to the console. Vex watched as her crew sprang into action, their bickering a strange comfort. If they were arguing, they were alive, and if they were alive, they had a fighting chance. "Nyx, any sign the aliens are preparing to make good on their threat?" Vex asked, keeping one eye on the viewport. "Not yet, but they are out there watching. Probably ready to swoop in the moment we screw up." "Then let's not screw up," Vex said, as if it were that simple. Rax worked the controls, muttering under his breath as he adjusted the ship systems. "Okay, reverse the polarity. Now what?" "Hit the switch," Vex ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos. Rax complied, and the ship shuddered as the new settings took effect. Outside, the space around them flickered, the remnants of the anomaly twisting and turning like a cosmic kaleidoscope. "Anything?" Vex asked, glancing at Nyx. "Hard to say," she replied. "It's not getting worse, but it's not exactly better either." "Story of our lives," Duke commented from his seat. "Let's hope it's enough," Vex said, trying not to think about their dwindling time. As the minutes ticked by, the tension in the bridge was as thick as the recycled air. Vex paced, her mind racing through possibilities, contingencies. There had to be something they were missing, some element that would tip the balance in their favor. "Captain," Rax said suddenly, pointing to the readout panel, "look at this." Vex peered over his shoulder, her eyes narrowing at the display. "Is that a gravitational anomaly?" Rax confirmed. "If we can redirect it, we might be able to stabilize the breach. Or blow us all to hell," Nyx pointed out, ever the realist. "Guess we won't know until we try," Vex said, her decision made. "Do it, Rax. Copy that," he replied, fingers flying over the controls. The ship groaned in protest as Rax made the adjustments, but it held steady. Outside, the swirling chaos began to slow, the colors fading as the breach stabilized. "It's working," Nyx said, sounding almost surprised. "We did it," Rax added, relief evident in his voice. "Let's not celebrate just yet," Vex cautioned, even as a sense of hope crept in. "Nyx, open a channel. Let's see if we've bought ourselves some goodwill." The connection opened, and Vex addressed their alien observers. "The breach is stable. We've done what we can." There was a pause, then the voice returned, begrudgingly impressed. "Your efforts have been noted. We will monitor the situation to ensure stability." "Appreciate it," Vex said, trying not to let the relief show. "We'll continue to work on repairs. We will be watching," the voice warned before cutting the channel. Vex leaned back in her chair, the tension slowly bleeding away. "Well, that went better than expected. Don't jinx it," Nyx advised, her tone half serious. "Yeah, we're not out of the woods yet," Duke added. "But at least we've got breathing room. For now, Rax agreed, shutting down the controls with a satisfied sigh. Vex looked around at her crew, their expressions a mix of relief and exhaustion. They'd survived another day, but the road ahead was still long and fraught with danger. "All right, let's take stock and see what else we can do to keep the universe from falling apart," she said, standing up. Nix nodded, rising to join her. "Here's to not dying tomorrow, then." "To not dying," Duke and Rax echoed, the tension in their voices easing. As the Eclipse continued its journey through the void, Vex couldn't shake the feeling that their troubles were far from over. But for now, they had a chance, and sometimes that was enough. "Let's get back to work," she said, her gaze fixed on the stars. With a shared sense of purpose, the crew returned to their tasks, driven by the knowledge that the fate of the universe might just rest in their hands, and their ability to improvise a solution from a pile of junk. It was a tall order, but if anyone could manage it, it was them. The cramped bridge of the Eclipse buzzed with activity, or maybe it was just the faulty wiring. Either way, the atmosphere felt about as stable as a politician's promise. Vex sat in her command chair, or what passed for one, considering it was more duct tape than cushion at this point, staring at the viewscreen. The alien ships had retreated, but she wasn't naive enough to believe they were out of the woods. Not even close. "All right, folks," Vex began, trying to project the air of a confident leader rather than someone making it up as she went along. "Let's figure out how not to die in the next few hours." "Sounds like a party," Duke said, lounging in his seat like he'd been born there. "I'll bring the snacks." "Yeah, if we had any," Nix replied, her scalpel clicking ominously as she flipped it between her fingers. "I'm getting tired of algae bars." "Thought you liked the taste of misery," Rax chimed in, still fiddling with the readout panel that resembled a bad abstract painting. "Tastes just like home." Nix shot him a glare that could have melted steel. "I'll savor your misery when you finally figure out how to fix that damn panel." "Touché," Rax muttered, returning to his work with newfound urgency. Vex allowed herself a small smile at their banter. It was the kind of dysfunctional camaraderie that made the Eclipse feel like home. If your home was a malfunctioning tin can floating through the void with a bullseye painted on the side. But there was a comfort in their arguments, a reassurance that as long as they could snark at each other, they could face whatever cosmic hell awaited them. "Captain," Rax said, his voice cutting through the familiar rhythm of sarcasm, "I think I've got something on the panel here. Looks like an incoming message from the aliens." "Finally, an invitation to their book club," Nix snarked, shifting her gaze to Vex. "What's the odds they are offering cookies?" "Odds are they are made of something that'll eat us from the inside out," Duke added, unfazed. Vex sighed as she moved to the console. "Let's hear it." Rax put it through. The screen flickered to life, displaying the same alien envoy as before. The being's face, if you could call it that, was a mass of shifting angles and disapproving glowers. You didn't need a degree in xenobiology to know they were still ticked off. "Captain Braith," the envoy intoned, sounding like disappointment distilled into audio form. "We offer a truce in terms for your continued existence." "Continued existence sounds lovely," Vex replied. "What's the catch?" "You will rendezvous at the coordinates provided. There, a representative will discuss reparations for the breach caused by your incompetence." "Reparations?" Duke echoed, his voice dripping with incredulity. "What, do they want us to mow their lawn?" "Shut it, Duke," Vex snapped, though she couldn't help but share his confusion. "And what if we refuse? Then your ship will be removed from this reality." The envoy's tone was so matter-of-fact that Vex almost expected him to follow up with a yawn. "Standard negotiation tactics," Nix muttered. "Threaten existential annihilation, then ask for a coffee date." "Lovely." "Tell them we'll be there," Vex said, her stomach twisting with unease as she cut the communication. She turned to her crew, forcing a smile. "See, easy peasy." Nix folded her arms, her expression skeptical. "And how are we planning to trust a bunch of aliens who think we're the equivalent of space vermin?" "We're not trusting them," Vex said firmly. "We're pretending to trust them while figuring out how to avoid getting vaporized." "Sounds like a plan," said Duke, ever the optimist, or was it pessimist? Hard to tell with him sometimes. Let's just hope their idea of reparations doesn't involve us scrubbing their ships with our toothbrushes. Or worse, Rax added with a shiver, being forced to attend one of their intergalactic seminars on cosmic etiquette. They all grimaced at the thought. If there was one thing worse than vaporization, it was likely an alien PowerPoint presentation on politeness. The ship lurched as Duke set them on course for the rendezvous. The crew braced themselves, accustomed by now to the Eclipse's penchant for impersonating a theme park ride. Vex tried not to think about the thin line between their current course and whatever lay beyond it. "We keep our eyes open," Vex instructed, glancing around at her crew. "And if they so much as look at us funny, we bolt." "Got it, Captain," Rax confirmed, though he still looked a bit green around the gills. Then again, existential threats tended to do that to a person. As the stars streaked by, Vex couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. It was more than the aliens promised to monitor the situation. It was the gut-deep intuition that came from too many close calls. She needed to trust her crew, but trust was a slippery thing, and in space it seemed even slipperier. You'd think a few decades of space travel would prepare you for anything. But then again, no one had prepared her for the sudden realization that one of her crew might be playing both sides. "Nix," Vex said casually, watching for any flicker of guilt. "Any readings on those coordinates?" "Nothing out of the ordinary," Nix replied smoothly. "Too smoothly, maybe." "Right. Keep it that way," Vex said, turning back to the console. She needed to keep her suspicions quiet until she could confirm them. No sense in causing a panic or a mutiny before she had all the pieces. The coordinates led them to a patch of space that seemed deceptively peaceful. Of course, Vex was well aware that peace was often just chaos in disguise, wearing its Sunday best to fool the unwary. The alien ship materialized from the void, sleek and ominous, like a shark in an ocean of stars. "Looks cozy," Duke remarked, maneuvering the Eclipse into position. "Wonder if they've got room service. Probably just the kind that disassembles you molecule by molecule," Rax commented, earning a chuckle from Nix. "Let's make this quick," Vex said, the weight of her suspicions pressing heavily on her. "Open a channel." The screen came to life once more, the alien envoy's face, or approximation thereof, appearing front and center. Vex resisted the urge to roll her eyes. "We're here," she said, as if stating the obvious might somehow change their luck. "Prepare to receive our envoy aboard your vessel," the alien instructed. "Any deviation from the protocol and you will be eradicated." "Subtle as ever," Vex muttered, cutting the channel. She turned to her crew, her expression serious. "Everyone on your toes. We've got a visitor." As they prepared to welcome their unexpected guest, Vex couldn't help but feel like she was missing something. Some crucial detail that danced just beyond her grasp. The kind of thing that, if left unchecked, tended to explode in your face. The airlock cycled open, and the envoy entered, its form as inscrutable as its intentions. It moved with the grace of a predator, a reminder that they were very much the prey. "Welcome to the Eclipse," Vex said, doing her best not to sound like a game show host. "Tea, coffee, instant death." The envoy's eyes, or were they sensors, swept over the crew. "We require no sustenance. Our business is negotiation." "Right," Vex said, glancing sideways at her crew. "Let's get to it then." Nix and Rax flanked her, each eyeing the envoy with varying degrees of suspicion. Duke lingered near the controls, ready to bolt at the slightest hint of trouble. "You will provide us with compensation for your disruption of the multiverse," the envoy stated, its tone devoid of inflection. "Failure to comply will result in termination." "And what exactly does compensation entail?" Vex asked, folding her arms. "Our firstborn, left socks, your cooperation in our research," the envoy replied. "Your vessel will serve as a test subject in our dimensional studies." "Not fond of being someone's lab rat," Nix muttered under her breath. "And what if we say no?" Vex pressed, her mind racing for alternatives. "Then you face the consequences," the envoy said with the kind of finality that made funeral dirges sound cheery. Great, Duke whispered to Rax. So we're either guinea pigs or stardust. Vex weighed her options, feeling the icy grip of inevitability closing in. The crew was counting on her to make the right call, and there was no room for error. But in the back of her mind, the nagging suspicion persisted. Someone among them might not be as loyal as they seemed. She needed time, and the only way to get it was to play along, at least for now. We'll consider your proposal, Vex said, trying to buy precious seconds. But we'll need all the details up front. The envoy paused, its gaze, or maybe just its attention fixing on Vex. Very well, it said finally. But remember, Captain Braith, time is a luxury you cannot afford. With that cryptic warning, the envoy turned and exited the ship, leaving a palpable tension in its wake. The crew watched its departure in silence, each absorbing the implications of the encounter. As soon as the airlock sealed, Vex rounded on her crew. Okay, what the hell was that? Feels like we're being set up, Nix said, her voice low. And I don't like being someone's pawn. Tell me about it, Rax agreed. I vote we get the hell out of here before we're neck-deep in alien bureaucracy, seconded, Duke added with a nod. I'm allergic to paperwork, especially when it's written in a language that wants us dead. Vex raised a hand to forestall their growing panic. Hold on, we need to think this through. We can't just run blind and hope we don't hit a wall. But Captain, Rax started, a touch of pleading in his voice, if we stay, we're done for. Which is why we need a plan, Vex insisted, tapping a finger against her temple as if the act alone might spark inspiration. You've got that look, Nix said, squinting at her. The one that says you're about to get us into even deeper trouble. Only way to get out of trouble is to go through it, Vex replied, though even she wasn't sure if she believed it. They spent the next hour dissecting the envoy's words, trying to extract meaning from the alien's cryptic demands. Vex explained her suspicions about a potential traitor, laying her cards on the table in a gamble for trust. You think one of us is feeding them intel? Duke asked, his laid-back demeanor giving way to genuine surprise. It's possible, Vex admitted. And if it's true, we're in deeper than we thought. Great, Nix muttered. Just when I thought we'd hit rock bottom, we find a shovel. Rax looked conflicted but nodded. We need to secure the ship's systems. If someone's leaking info, we have to find them before it's too late. And if we don't, Duke asked, drumming his fingers on the console, then we make sure whoever it is doesn't get the chance to finish the job, Vex said grimly. With the plan in place, they set to work, each focused on their assigned task. The air was thick with unspoken tension, the weight of betrayal hanging over them like a guillotine. Vex couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time, but she'd be damned if she let the universe, or an interdimensional rat, get the better of her crew. Together, they'd face whatever nightmares awaited them beyond the stars, and if they were lucky, they might just live to tell the tale. The Eclipse rattled like a tin can in a hurricane, every surface vibrating in a symphony of discomfort. Vex Braith stood on the bridge, surrounded by the mechanical groans and squeals of a ship that clearly needed therapy, or at least a good oil change. She could feel her crew's eyes on her, expecting miracles or at least a decently optimistic lie. But all she had to offer was a grimace that could curdle fresh milk. Captain, I think we've hit the jackpot of all screw-ups, Rax announced from the malfunctioning readout panel, which now displayed a Picasso-esque interpretation of their impending doom. So, nothing's changed. Vex replied dryly, trying to ignore the growing urge to punch something. Preferably the universe. Hard. Duke lounged at the controls, still managing to look relaxed despite their imminent destruction. Maybe we should just invite them over for tea. I hear interdimensional invaders love a good Earl Grey, or maybe some coffee, Nick suggested, laced with arsenic. Make it a real party. Vex shot them a look that could peel paint. Focus, people. We're not hosting a tea party, we're trying not to die. Outside the ship, space was a swirling maelstrom of hostile forces converging on them, a cosmic joke with the punchline being their explosive demise. The aliens had retreated, sure, but like a bad smell, they lingered, waiting for the right moment to pounce. "Any good news?" Vex asked, hoping against hope. "Well," Duke said, "we haven't exploded yet." "That's something. Low bar, Duke," Vex said, her voice as dry as a desert. "But I'll take it." The ship shuddered again, and Vex's patience thinned to the point of non-existence. The crew was silent, each lost in their own grim thoughts. They were past the point of gallows humor and into the territory of legitimate fear. Rax tapped a few more keys on his panel, frowning at the abstract art it presented. "Captain, I'm pretty sure this thing's trying to tell us we're in 3 places at once." "I didn't even know that was a thing." "Fantastic," Nix chimed in. "We're multitasking our way to oblivion." Vex's mind raced, searching for options in a universe that seemed hell-bent on crushing them. Retreat wasn't an option, not with the dimensional boundary closing around them like a noose. Surrender felt even worse, like admitting they were just monkey meat for the intergalactic grinder. "Can't we just, I dunno, reverse the polarity or something?" Duke suggested, not entirely serious but hopeful nonetheless. "Reverse the polarity of what exactly?" Rax asked. "The universe, why not? Maybe we'll pop out the other side in a universe where we're all billionaires or dead," Nix added helpfully. Vex pinched the bridge of her nose, feeling a headache forming. Suggestions that don't involve magic tricks. The crew fell silent again, the weight of their predicament pressing down like gravity gone haywire. Vex could feel the despair seeping in at the edges, her own resolve fraying with each passing second. Then, as if the universe had decided to sprinkle a little more chaos on their misery, the view screen flickered. Static danced across its surface before resolving into an image that made Vex's stomach drop. A face appeared, a human one, but not one she recognized. It had the unsettling quality of a dream half-remembered, or a déjà vu that prickled at the back of your mind. The stranger looked directly at the camera, as though they could see right into the Eclipse. "Captain Braith," the figure said, voice crackling with the interference of 1,000 dimensions. "If you're seeing this, then there is still hope." "Who the hell is this?" Rax asked, eyes wide. "Someone who clearly skipped the queue at the afterlife," Nix muttered. Vex frowned at the screen, suspicion warring with a flicker of hope. "Who are you?" The figure offered a faint, almost apologetic smile. "Call me a friend. From somewhere you won't remember but desperately need." "Cryptic much," Duke commented, earning a glare from Vex. "I don't have long before they notice this transmission," the figure continued. "You're in grave danger, but there's a way out. A way to shift the odds back in your favor. Care to share the secret, or are we playing 20 questions?" Vex shot back. The figure ignored her sarcasm. "There's a device hidden on your ship, a relic from a civilization long gone. It can stabilize the dimensional rift, but it's been hidden away even from you. Find it and you may just survive." "A scavenger hunt?" Nick scoffed. "Great. Now all we need is a map and some breadcrumbs. How do we know you're not the one setting us up?" Rax asked, voicing the suspicion gnawing at them all. The stranger's gaze softened, almost as if they could see right through the screen. "Because if you trust me, you might just save more than your own lives." The image flickered again, threatening to dissolve into static. "Look for the compartment beneath the auxiliary control panel. And Captain, trust in those you doubt." With that enigmatic farewell, the transmission cut out, leaving the crew in the grip of silence once more. Vex stared at the blank screen, her mind racing through possibilities and pitfalls. The message could be a trap, a ruse to lead them into a final, fatal mistake. Or it could be salvation, a slim thread of hope in a universe that had turned hostile. "Well, that was either the best or worst prank call we've ever gotten," Duke said, breaking the tension. "What do you think, Captain?" Rax asked quietly. Vex weighed their options, none of them particularly appealing. "We're running out of choices. If there's even a chance that what they said is true," she trailed off, the unspoken decision hanging in the air. It was a gamble, but then again, their whole existence was one big roll of the dice. "Let's find that compartment," she said finally, her voice steeled with determination. "And hope there's something good in Pandora's box for once." They moved swiftly, each step echoing in the cramped corridors of the Eclipse. The auxiliary control panel was located in the guts of the ship, a forgotten corner filled with dust and neglect. Nick's pride opened the panel, revealing a tangle of wires and circuits. "Looks like someone's brain after a night of hard drinking," she commented, pulling aside the mess with deft fingers. Vex crouched beside her, searching for anything that might stand out. An odd glint caught her eye, a small compartment, barely noticeable in the jumble. With a delicate touch, she pressed against it, and the panel slid open to reveal a small device, dark and unassuming. "That's it?" Duke asked, peering over her shoulder. "Doesn't look like much. Neither does a bullet," Rax pointed out, "but it'll still kill you." Vex examined the device, a knot of uncertainty twisting in her gut. It didn't make sense, but then again, nothing about their situation did. Let's see if our mystery friend was right. They carried the device back to the bridge, a fragile hope wrapped in a cloak of doubt. Vex handed it to Rax, trusting his technical expertise more than her own instincts. "Think you can make it work?" she asked, trying not to sound as desperate as she felt. Rax studied it with a frown, brow creased in concentration. "It's old tech, but I've seen something like it before. Give me a minute." The minutes stretched, each one feeling like an eternity. Outside, the swirling chaos of space pressed closer, as if eager to swallow them whole. Vex paced the bridge, her mind a whirlwind of fear and determination. Finally, Rax straightened, holding the device with a look of cautious triumph. "I think it's ready, think." Nix quipped, raising an eyebrow. "Not exactly reassuring, Rax. Best you're gonna get," he shot back. "But if this thing blows us up, I'm haunting you all." "Fair enough," Vex said, trying to ignore the nervous flutter in her stomach. "Let's do this." Rax activated the device, and for a moment nothing happened. Then, with a sound like 1,000 whispers merging into one, the ship seemed to hum with a new energy. The view screen flickered, showing the chaos outside beginning to still, like a storm relenting under the weight of its own fury. "Guess our friend wasn't completely full of crap," Duke said, a note of awe in his voice. Vex allowed herself a small smile, relief mingling with lingering caution. They weren't out of the woods yet, but for the first time, the path ahead didn't seem quite so hopeless. "Hold on to your hats," she said, her tone lightening just a fraction. "We might just live to fight another day." As the Eclipse steadied in the shifting tides of the universe, Vex felt the weight on her shoulders lift just a little. They had a chance, a real fighting chance. And for the crew of the Eclipse, that was more than they dared hope for. Vex Braith leaned against the rust-streaked wall of the Eclipse's bridge, eyes fixed on the recently calmed view screen. She couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just sold her soul to a devil masquerading as a cryptic stranger. But then again, when the entire universe was knocking at the door with a battering ram, maybe a little Faustian bargaining was in order. "Right, seems like we've got a plan, or the closest thing to one since try not to die became our motto," Vex said, breaking the uneasy silence. "We need to manipulate this anomaly and hope it doesn't end with us decorating the vacuum of space. Or worse, in laws," Duke murmured from his perch at the controls, lounging as if they weren't standing on the edge of complete obliteration. Rax, still fiddling with the ancient device like it was the holy grail of broken promises, glanced up. "You know, Vex, this thing could turn us all into a smear on the cosmic windshield." "Optimism, Rax. It's what gets us through the day," Vex replied dryly. "Besides, if it doesn't work, we won't be around to blame each other," Nick snorted. "Kind of like trusting a rattlesnake not to bite, or Duke here to not hit on the first alien he sees." "Hey," Duke protested with mock offense, "I have standards. Just not high ones." Vex rolled her eyes, though the banter was a welcome distraction. "All right, enough flirting with disaster, people. Let's focus on the task at hand. Not dying." The Eclipse was a patchwork quilt of failing tech and creaky metal, and now it was their last hope against a reality-bending doom. The crew had to somehow manipulate the anomaly without turning themselves into an interstellar abstract art piece. No pressure. "All right, Rax, let's say this thing does what our mysterious benefactor says it does," Vex said, nodding towards the device. What's our next step? Well, if I've got this right, and that's a big if, mind you, it should stabilize the rift enough for us to manipulate it. Basically, we poke a hole in the madness and slip through, poking holes in madness. Sounds like my last marriage, Nick said with a wry smile. Then we need to coordinate our timing, Vex continued, ignoring the quip. We open the rift just wide enough and get the hell out before it snaps back. Duke scratched his chin thoughtfully. And if it doesn't snap back, then we've got a whole new set of problems, Rax said, back to tinkering with the device. But let's not borrow trouble. We've got plenty as it is, Vex nodded, the weight of command heavy on her shoulders. Trust was a scarce resource, and she had to dole it out like rations in a siege. We're going to need to work together. Perfectly. One misstep and it's game over. Nyx crossed her arms, her expression turning serious for once. Captain, you sure about this? Trust in those you doubt and all that. Look, I know it's not ideal, Vex replied, meeting her gaze. But what choice do we have? We either trust this stranger's advice, or we wait for the universe to squash us like bugs. Good all humanity, always finding new ways to gamble, Duke said, a grim smile playing on his lips. The crew exchanged glances, the kind that said more than words ever could. Fear, doubt, camaraderie, all mixed together in a cocktail of impending doom. It was now or never. All right, let's get this show on the road, Vex said, her voice firm. Rax, you're the key to this whole mess. Get that thing ready, Rax nodded, his fingers dancing over the device's controls like a pianist at a recital. Ready as I'll ever be, Nyx, Duke, keep an eye on the systems. We need to know about any hiccups before they become life-ending. Roger that, Nyx replied, slipping into her seat with a professionalism that belied her usual sarcasm. Got it, Captain, Duke added, his eyes flickering over the controls with practiced ease. As Rax made the final adjustments, Vex felt the tension in the room ratchet up another notch. It was the kind of suspense that could turn your insides to jelly, but she couldn't afford to let it show. Not now. All right, Rax, hit it. Rax pressed a button and the device hummed to life, casting an eerie, otherworldly glow that filled the bridge. The ship vibrated beneath their feet like a beast stirring from slumber. Rifts opening, Rax announced, his voice tight with concentration. Hold on to something. On the view screen, the fabric of space seemed to ripple, as if reality itself was a curtain being tugged aside. It wasn't like the peaceful opening of a door. It was more like tearing through layers of chaos with a blunt instrument. Coordinates locked, Duke reported, his casual demeanor replaced by laser focus. We're ready. Here goes nothing, Nyx muttered, her fingers flying over her console. Vex took a deep breath, feeling the ship lurch as they maneuvered towards the shimmering gap. The Eclipse groaned in protest, but there was no turning back. Steady, Vex said, her eyes locked on the view screen. Just a little more, the ship shuddered violently, the anomaly thrumming with energy. It felt like riding a roller coaster overlaid with 1,000 screaming banshees. Come on, you rust bucket, Vex urged, willing the ship to hold together for just a little while longer. With a final bone-jarring lurch, the Eclipse plunged through the rift, leaving the chaos behind. The view screen flickered, and for a moment everything was still. Did we make it? Duke asked, breaking the silence. Rax checked his readings, a slow smile spreading across his face. We did it. We're through. Vex released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Relief washed over her like a wave, but she knew better than to celebrate too soon. Systems are stabilizing, Nyx reported, her voice edged with disbelief. We're in one piece. Good work, everyone, Vex said, trying to keep the elation out of her voice. But let's stay sharp. We're not out of the woods yet. What woods? Duke quipped, his humor returning. This is space. We're never in woods, metaphorically speaking, Duke, Vex replied with a wry smile. As the ship settled into its new reality, the crew exchanged glances that spoke of shared relief and unspoken admiration. They'd done the impossible, or at least the highly improbable. See. Nothing to it, Rax said, though the tremor in his voice betrayed his bravado. Yeah, piece of cake, Nyx agreed, though her fingers still clutched the console like a lifeline. Vex allowed herself a moment to savor the victory. They'd pulled off a miracle, and for once, the universe hadn't decided to kick them in the teeth. But the reprieve was temporary. The alien threat still loomed, and their mysterious benefactor's motives were as clear as mud. There were battles ahead, challenges that would test their mettle and resolve. Yet for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Vex dared to hope. Maybe, just maybe, they'd find a way to survive in a universe hell-bent on their destruction. "All right, crew," she said, her voice steady with newfound determination. "Let's see what this new reality has in store for us." They'd made it this far, against the odds, against the looming specter of their own fears. Whatever came next, they would face it together, come hell or high water. Or, in their case, cosmic anomalies and interstellar chaos. The Eclipse drifted in the silence of space, the latest anomaly now behind them. It was the type of quiet that stretched in all directions, threatening to swallow the ship whole. Vex Braith surveyed the bridge, her mind already plotting the next fiasco they were going to willingly dive into. "All right," Vex said, breaking the silence like a cheap vase. "We've jumped through hoops and flirted with death again. Now comes the fun part." "Define fun," Nyx quipped, not bothering to look up from her console. "If you mean trying to outwit a cosmic conundrum, sign me up. More like trying to outwit a cosmic hangover," Duke chimed in, spinning lazily in his chair. "I'd settle for a pint right now, to be honest." "Focus," Vex said, though she couldn't suppress a small grin. "We've got to deal with this anomaly once and for all. Or else it'll be the universe's piñata and we're the candy." Rax, his fingers still dancing over the ancient device, glanced up with a raised eyebrow. "So what's the plan, Captain? We've poked the bear, now what plan?" Vex echoed, feigning surprise. "I thought we'd just wing it and hope for the best," Nyx snorted. "Now you're speaking my language." "But seriously," Vex continued, turning back to the view screen. "We need to create a controlled implosion. Reset the anomaly. It's our best shot at stabilizing this mess before it decides to twist us into a Möbius strip." "Controlled implosion." Duke scratched his head. "Isn't that like saying friendly fire?" "There's nothing friendly about it, or controlled for that matter," Nyx added. "But hey, who's keeping track?" Vex sighed, rubbing her temples. "Look, it's risky. Like, stupidly risky. But we don't have time to second guess. The aliens are still lurking, waiting for us to trip over our own feet. Waiting to see if humanity can outstupid itself," Rax muttered. "They've got front row seats." "Exactly," Vex said. "We show them what we're made of: guts, grit, and a healthy disregard for self-preservation." Rax gave a reluctant nod, his focus returning to the device. "All right, let's see if this thing can implode beautifully." "Sounds like my last relationship," Duke quipped, smirking. "Ended with fireworks and a restraining order." Nyx rolled her eyes. "Duke, if you're going to reminisce, save it for when we're not 10 seconds from becoming cosmic graffiti." All right," Duke said, raising his hands in mock surrender. "Let's light this firecracker." The crew settled into a tense rhythm, each member laser-focused on their part of the plan. Vex kept one eye on the view screen, the other on her crew. She trusted them implicitly, but trust didn't save you when the universe decided to yank the rug out. "Rax," Vex called, her voice steady. "Give me good news." "Good news," Rax said, glancing up. "Got a fresh cup of optimism for breakfast. Just tell me it'll work," Vex replied, a hint of desperation creeping in. Rax hesitated, then sighed. "If I say yes, will that make you feel better? Because honestly, I'm about as certain of this as I am of Duke's dating life, chaotic and disastrous." Vex managed a dry laugh. "Fair enough, all right, everyone," Rax announced, fingers poised over the controls. "On my mark, we're gonna hit this anomaly with the biggest cosmic sucker punch we can muster." "Can't wait to see it," Nyx muttered, her eyes on the readout panel, which was predictably glitching like a caffeine addict on withdrawal. 3, 2, 1, now," Rax shouted, slamming his hand onto the device's main switch. The bridge erupted in a cacophony of alarms and vibrations, the ship protesting the sudden surge of energy. On the view screen, the anomaly twisted violently, like a giant trying to shake off an itch. "Hold it together, baby," Duke murmured, coaxing the ship with the tenderness reserved for a prized jalopy. The Eclipse groaned, its metal frame shivering under the strain. Vex gritted her teeth, white-knuckling the armrest. It was like trying to ride a hurricane without a seatbelt. Come on," she urged, the words barely audible over the noise. The anomaly shuddered, the implosion drawing it inward, like a black hole feasting on a celestial buffet. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then, with a shuddering gasp, the rift began to collapse in on itself. "Holy hell, it's working," Rax breathed, shock mingling with exhilaration. "Don't jinx it, Rax," Nyx warned, her eyes glued to the instruments. Right, Rax muttered, though the excitement was evident. The anomaly continued to shrink, folding in on itself until it was a mere pinprick in the vastness of space. And then, with a final flash of light, it was gone, leaving only the quiet hum of the ship's machinery. "Did we just?" Duke began, trailing off. "We did," Vex confirmed, her voice tinged with disbelief. "We actually did it." Nyx leaned back, letting out a low whistle. "Never thought I'd see the day when I was proud of blowing something up. Welcome to the club," Duke said, grinning. They'd done it, turned chaos into order, bent the rules of reality, and lived to tell the tale. It was insanity, but it was their kind of insanity. Yet the victory was bittersweet. The alien ships, once lurking just beyond their sensors, were now pulling back, perhaps rethinking their strategy in the wake of such a display. But who knew for how long? "Looks like our friends are reconsidering," Vex noted, nodding to the view screen. "Or maybe they just want to see what crazy thing we'll do next." "Can't blame them," Rax said, stretching his fingers. "We're a hell of a show." Vex allowed herself a moment to breathe, to savor the triumph. But it was only a moment. There were still questions unanswered, threats lurking in the shadows. "Well, we've bought ourselves some time," Vex said, her voice cutting through the lingering tension. "Let's make the most of it. For once I'm with you, Captain," Nyx said, her smile genuine. "Same here," Duke added, his usual flippant demeanor softening. Vex nodded, feeling the weight of command, but also the lighter touch of camaraderie. They'd faced the abyss and refused to blink. "All right, let's see what the universe throws at us next," Vex said, her voice filled with a mix of weariness and determination. "But this time we'll be ready." The crew of the Eclipse exchanged glances, an unspoken understanding passing between them. They were more than just survivors now, they were a force to be reckoned with. "Let's get to work," Vex ordered, her tone brooking no dissent. As the crew set about their tasks, the Eclipse sailed on through the void, its crew ready for whatever reality dared to throw their way. Against all odds, they'd found their footing in a universe intent on tearing them down. And for now, that was enough. They'd face the unknown together. In the uneasy peace that followed, Vex found herself alone on the bridge, staring out at the stars. Each pinprick of light was a reminder of how vast their universe was, how full of challenges and mysteries. But for the first time in what felt like an eternity, she didn't feel like a speck caught in the winds of fate. She felt like a captain, a leader who'd taken the reins and steered her ship through the storm. And though she knew tougher days lay ahead, she also knew they had the grit to face whatever came next. "All right, Eclipse," Vex murmured, leaning back in her chair. "Show me what you've got." With a final glance at the stars, she let herself smile, wry, tired, but undeniably hopeful. And the Eclipse sailed on, ready to meet the cosmos head-on. In the vast expanse of space, they were just one ship, one crew. But they were more than enough for the universe to reckon with. Bring it on. The Eclipse drifted through the void like the universe's most battered tin can, but it was their tin can. Vex Braith, captain, ringleader, and occasional sanity checker, stood on the bridge, staring out at the now anomaly-free space. For once, the universe wasn't trying to rip them a new one. It was practically a Kumbaya moment. "Can you believe it?" Vex asked, half to herself, half to the crew. "We're not dead, speak for yourself," Nyx replied, still glued to her console. "I've been dead inside for years." "Optimism, Nyx," Duke said, spinning in his chair like a child on a sugar high. "It gets us through the day, or at least until the next crisis." Rax finished fiddling with the ancient device, which had miraculously not exploded in their faces. Well, we've bought ourselves a brief vacation from becoming stardust. What's next? Captain Vex sighed, glancing at the view screen. I guess we celebrate not being cosmic graffiti. Duke raised an imaginary glass. Here's to being less dead than yesterday. Their chuckles filled the bridge, a sound so rare it might as well have been a unicorn sighting. But it was short-lived. Incoming signals flashed on Nix's console, the readout panel sputtering like it was allergic to good news. Guys, Nix said, her voice cautious. I think we've got company. The crew turned their attention to the view screen where a series of alien ships hovered at a safe distance. Their sleek forms were both a reminder of past threats and maybe a promise of future. Something. Peace. War. Probably both. Because why not? Looks like they're back for round 2, Rax muttered, fingers twitching. Or they just want to admire our handiwork, Duke suggested, leaning back with a grin. We did give them a heck of a show. Vex folded her arms, contemplating their next move. All right, let's open a channel. See if they want to congratulate us or just laugh at our expense. Nix tapped a few keys, the screen flickering for a moment before stabilizing. Channel open, Captain. Attention, alien ships, Vex announced, her voice steady. This is Captain Vex Braith of the Eclipse. We'd appreciate it if you didn't shoot us out of the sky. There was a pause, the kind that made you second-guess every life choice leading to that moment. Then the view screen filled with the face of an alien commander, regal yet oddly amused. Captain Braith, the alien said, its voice smooth as silk and just as dangerous. Quite the spectacle you've provided. I must admit, we're intrigued. Glad to hear it, Vex replied, keeping her tone light. So what now? You here to congratulate us or just waiting for us to screw up again? The alien tilted its head, a gesture that was either amusement or preparing to turn them into space debris. A bit of both, perhaps. We've been observing your misadventures. Careful, Duke whispered to Vex. Don't poke the bear. Too late for that, she whispered back. Bear's already been poked. The alien continued, your resilience is commendable. We've decided to postpone hostilities. See where this goes. Well, that's a relief, Nix murmured, sarcasm not quite masking her genuine relief. Thank you for your, patience, Vex said, choosing her words like someone defusing a bomb. We're open to dialogue. Rax echoed, raising an eyebrow. We're talking to the universe's most advanced species and we're offering dialogue. Got a better idea? Vex shot back, voice barely a whisper. Point taken, Rax conceded, gesturing for her to continue. The alien nodded, seemingly satisfied. Very well, we shall observe your progress. Perhaps in time there will be opportunities for collaboration. Sounds like a plan, Vex said, trying not to let the surprise leak into her voice. We'll keep our end of the bargain, try not to die and maybe learn a thing or two. The alien's image flickered, then vanished, leaving the crew staring at the starry expanse once more. Silence reigned, a heavy, contemplative kind. Well, that was unexpected, Duke said, scratching his head. Unexpected is our middle name, Nix replied, her fingers dancing across the console. Vex turned to face her crew, feeling a strange mix of triumph and trepidation. Looks like we've got ourselves an alliance, sort of. Let's not screw it up. Here's hoping they don't change their minds and decide we're better as space dust, Rax said, packing away the ancient device. Optimism, Rax, Duke reminded him with a wink. Vex allowed herself a small smile, feeling the weight of command shift slightly. They'd bought themselves time, a rare commodity in their line of work, and maybe, just maybe, a chance to turn enemies into frenemies. Or at least non-explosive acquaintances. As the crew settled back to their tasks, the Eclipse continued its journey through the vast, indifferent universe. They were one ship, one crew, but they were also more than that. They were survivors, misfits, and maybe, if they played their cards right, peacemakers. Vex found herself alone on the bridge again, the stars stretching endlessly before her. It was a moment of quiet introspection, a rarity in their chaotic existence. She thought of the endless possibilities, the multiverse with all its mysteries and menacing wonders. "All right, Universe," Vex murmured, a wry smile tugging at her lips. "Let's see what you've got next." For now they'd live in the moment, savoring the small victory. They'd poked the bear and survived. Tomorrow held new challenges, new anomalies, and probably a few more sarcastic remarks from Duke. But they'd face it together, come hell or high cosmic water. The Eclipse sailed on through the void, ready to embrace whatever the universe dared to throw at them. For they were more than just a speck in the cosmos. They were the crew of the Eclipse, and they weren't going anywhere.